Proportional Response, Book 1, Chapter 20, Part 4, Play a Game. Inibal sat in his brother's living room and wanted, desperately, to shoot his aunt a glare, but he couldn't. And she knew he couldn't as she sat there and gave her best mischievous but innocent look, while his hands blushed to near purple tones as she smirked at him. She knew the secret, and knew he had to tell it, and knew all too well it should have been told sooner. Henry caught the look between them and raised an eyebrow. I knew this needed to happen a long time ago, and getting what amounted to an order from Her Majesty no less means it is even more overdue. He steeled himself with a deep breath, and then blinked as he thought about all the times his brother had caused him to spit take his drink, or otherwise caught him out, and he felt a smile tug at his lips. I'm the one who is one up on the information this time, might as well have some fun with it. Maybe that was what remained of the booze talking, but he didn't care. He leaned back in his chair, took a long pull off the glass of fruit juice they'd switched to, and gave Henry his best shit-eating grin, the one he'd learned from Henry.
Oh, my family and the royals are rather well acquainted. Yes, but not the way you are thinking. I met her royal pain in the ass before my aunt here did, though she met the princess before me. That said, I have known the princess for a little while now. You could even say that we are friends, I'd think. Close friends, even.
Eldia stifled a giggle, which earned her a sidelong look from Henry.
There is something missing here. I feel like a game is afoot, and you two aren't telling me the rules.
He lifted one eyebrow, then waved his juice theatrically.
Okay, fine, I'll play. You met the Empress first, but my darling here met the princess first. I remember the first time you met Her Royal Majesticness, Inibal, when I sent you off to tell her that we were altering the deal, and if she wanted any say in how it altered further, she'd best send someone to sit at the table.
Henry then turned to Eldia and tapped his lips.
I'm guessing that you met the beloved despot.
Inibal gave Henry a little side-eye at that. Joking with her title was one thing, disparaging her reign itself was another. His brother grinned and shrugged an apology, and continued.
Okay, met Nihalia on your way here, probably to interview, or be briefed, or something, before being posted as journalists, or whatever, to the embassy.
Henry closed his eyes thoughtfully.
That means that you, brother mine, couldn't have met the princess until after that, but you claim that you've grown close. So, what? Conversations over a cucumber after my darling here made an introduction? Or did you meet her through that noble fiancé you seem to have picked up?
Inibal watched Henry's eyes open, then draw down, while Eldia stifled another giggle and squirmed a little in her chair. She's enjoying this, and is having a hard time letting me play the game my way. May as well push it forward a little.
Oh, Q calls have definitely been a factor for some time now, and you could say I met the princess through my fiancé, in a manner of speaking. But I did meet the princess in person, not over a call. She is impressive, to say the least.
He realized he'd gone quiet with a 1,000-yard stare when Henry spoke up.
Well, she must be as much a match for her mother, as some folks claim, to have both of you so impressed. I do hope I get to meet her one day.
Eldia threw her head back and laughed at that, unable to contain herself any longer. Henry started slightly and gave her a wary look. Time for the giveaway clue.
Oh, but you have met her, brother, and you found her every bit as impressive as my aunt here did. Also, you told your beloved lady there several times, and told me in no uncertain terms, for that matter.
Henry's eyebrows drew down again, and his eyes darted around as he searched his memory. Inibal leaned even further back in his chair and switched his drink hand to leave his ring hand unencumbered. Any moment now. Come on, brother. He could see the moment the thought landed in Henry's mind. It seemed to explode somewhere inside the man's skull. His brother suddenly sat bolt upright, and his eyes got as big as saucers.
No way. I mean, I thought something seemed a little familiar about the girl on the other end of that call just now. But how?
Henry leapt out of his chair and began to pace the room.
Our intel boys have believed for a while that your royals sometimes undergo facial reconstruction so that they can walk among the masses occasionally, but really?
Henry stopped moving and stared at Enable, who just sat back and wiggled his engagement ring at the man. Henry then shook his head and sat, heavily, back in his chair and stared with his eyes wide and his jaw slack. He finally blinked, and something in the man's mind seemed to rally. His eyes narrowed, then he threw his head back and laughed, a loud, hard belly laugh that seemed to shake the very room. After a few moments, the laugh cut off abruptly to be replaced by a piercing stare.
Wait, you are really overdue to give me this information. I was supposed to find out after I told you about Phoenix.
Enable couldn't help himself and gave a wicked grin.
Well, technically, you still haven't told me about Phoenix. You've told everyone all at once, but never specifically sat and talked to me about it.
He put on his best faux prim noble routine and began to fastidiously examine his hands while raising his eyebrows and pursing his lips. Henry rolled his eyes but refused to take the bait. Instead, a bit to Enable's chagrin, his brother rounded on his aunt and pointed an accusing finger at her.
You knew the whole time. Wait a minute, you even pushed me into getting old Black Hole for brains here to get over himself. When you knew, how could you not tell me? I mean, I know we agreed to let you have the secret, but when it was this big...
Eldia laughed and kissed Henry's forehead, then handed him a fresh drink. Whiskey this time.
You are, I believe, my dear love, familiar with the concept of operational security. Bullshit. No, really, darling. The entire time Princess Lyra was here, only 5 people knew. Me, Kaz and his wives, and the head of embassy security for the Venter. Kaz didn't even tell John the accountant. No one else knew who she was the entire time she was here. At least, not until our boy found out. Granted, most of embassy security knew she was a secret VIP, but none knew just how very important. By the time she left, she'd snagged herself a necklace.
Enable smiled again as she turned to him.
Or maybe you snagged yourself a ring. At that point, it wasn't my secret to tell.
Enable cut in.
And of course, ever since you announced, rather spectacularly, to the entire bloody Lee exactly what Project Phoenix was, things have moved quite rapidly, and we haven't had a lot of opportunity to sit down and have a private conversation like we used to. Unless you would rather have had this conversation over a video link.
He arched a single eyebrow at Henry, who sat back and waved his hand to concede the point.
Okay, not unfair. Hot damn, my brother is gonna marry the princess.
Henry chuckled again and shook his head, then gave a sardonic look.
You realize, of course, that this means you will have to come to my funeral a few days after your wedding, right? My intel guys have spent thousands of hours already in the short time since Vashna left trying to figure out just who the hell exactly she is. And I can't tell them that you are the princess's intended while you are still here, not with everything that is going on.
Henry gave another small laugh.
They have been trying to backtrace the movements of every single noble girl of the right age, find one who dropped off the radar at the right time, and have more than one supercomputer trying to do facial recognition. They're going to flat out murder me when they find out.
Henry laughed again.
And of course, when they get done, they're gonna owe me beer for the rest of their natural lives.
Enable arched an eyebrow at this. He understood the hyperbole about murder, but didn't get the part about the beer.
Wait a minute, they will owe you beer? I would think that...
Henry waved a hand at him.
Things get weird when dealing with the intel guys. Best not to question it too closely.
Henry's smile grew broad again.
Of course, I do look forward to the actual wedding. I assume that is planned for some time shortly after the war is over. It will be good to...
Henry sat bolt upright in his chair again, then brought his hand down on the armrest so hard Enable feared it might break, even through the padding.
Wait a minute. So that is what she was talking about. I guarantee we will meet in person one day, Henry, and probably sooner than you think. That crafty old bitch. If I'm going to be best man at your wedding...
Enable felt his own smile match Henry's from a moment before.
You are also, technically, going to be Princess Lyra's brother-in-law, though that doesn't confer title, or even automatic citizenship, though I'm sure Her Majesty will grant it if you like.
Henry had blanched for a moment, then let out a slow sigh. Enable knew about the Confederation's rules regarding officials and non-confederated nations, so He wanted to make sure he'd set his friend's mind at ease. Eldia did it for him with a giggle.
You needn't worry, my love. The brother bond between you two hasn't been officially recorded, and won't be until you have left public office, if it is even recorded then. Brother bonds are often left unrecorded by the law until something comes up where it matters, sometimes not until one of them dies and the will is being read.
Henry smiled and shook his head, then slammed back his drink. Eldia jumped up to fetch another round while Henry spoke.
I remember coming back here to find you with that ring, and I remember being sad that Vashna had left us. Partly sad for you, but partly on my own account. The girl was fun to be around and had some excellent ideas, and watching her marshal a fight. She seemed to flow around the fighters with that staff in her hand. I think she is going to make excellent queen. Still, I get the feeling that you didn't find out who she actually was until you tried to hang a necklace on her, right?
Annabel tried to catch his body's reaction in time, but knew he'd never really had a chance. His hands blushed a deep, dark blue. His aunt passed out drinks, the top-shelf whiskey this time, and giggled.
Oh, you got that right. That is...
Annabel shot her a warning look, which she responded to with a wave of her hand and a mischievous glint in her eye.
Not my story to tell.
Annabel sat up a little straighter.
Good. Love you though I do, Henry. That moment is rather private, and I would rather not.
Eldia laughed.
Lyra thought you might say that, dear, when the time came.
She turned to Henry.
You see, she also thought you'd have a hell of a reaction to finding out who she really was, and she wanted to be here for it, so bad. She could taste it. So, she made me promise to record the event if I was able, which I have, and use any reasonable means at my disposal to get you to agree to letting her see it.
Annabel choked on his whiskey, and it burned in his nose. Elida winked at him and continued.
Therefore, I propose a trade. You let her see the video I took of this whole conversation, and I will tell you the sordid story if your brother here won't. Now, wait a minute here, Aunt Eldia. Do I even get a say in this?
She turned to him and gave him her sweetest, and yet most predatory smile. Oh.
Of course you do, dear. Just say the word and I will delete the recording, and we won't tell your poor brother here anything at all. Of course, if you do that, you'll be the one to explain to your fiancée why she doesn't get to see Henry's reaction to her identity, nor to hearing the story of what happened.
Annabel tried to picture how she might react to such news, and none of the possibilities felt good. He feared his hands might permanently turn black at this point, but just shook his head and shrugged, then waved a hand in assent. Henry, still looking a bit dazed, pulled out his comms unit.
Who's on deck? Okay, good. Hold my appointments for the rest of the day, and please notify the Venter Embassy, officially, that their ambassador and I are involved in extensive talks on various matters of trade in regards to the war, and he won't be back as scheduled. Thank you, dearie.
With that, Henry clicked off and leaned forward expectantly.
Okay, I want to hear the story, but there are a few things I would like cleared up first. You are going to be the husband of the Empress, and I can tell from what little I know about Her Majesty that the position doesn't hold any political power. So, just what does that mean?
Annabel felt his eyes go a little wide. Just when I think I have the man entirely figured out, he goes and surprises me. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised though, knowing what is in store for me, and thus our relationship, on some level, is important, and he doesn't want to get wrapped up in the other fur. He nodded to Henry and started to talk. They talked for hours, Henry asking adroit questions here or there, which he or his aunt would field. They told him the tale of the proposal, of course, and his aunt even made him recite Lyra's little apology speech. This all led to a host of sidetracks and other conversations about their own personal histories, which led to other deeper conversations. By the time they finished, they were all pleasantly inebriated, again, and Henry called for a Marine to help him home. Two of them took one look at him and volunteered, somehow managing to provide him with just the right support so that he appeared sober. Not that it mattered much to him, he felt as if a great stones had been removed from his shoes, and found himself walking very lightly all the way home.